Testing 1, 2.
Got like a godlike little light.
I like that.
Stream test 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
I look like a puppet.
Everyone on the line, we are testing our YouTube stream right now. Please keep yourselves muted. Thank you. Stream test 1, 2, 1, 2. Testing for feedback 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
That sounded okay, Mel.
Thank you.
Testing for feedback 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Kelly, can you hear me? This is Caitlin, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Yes, I can, and you're clear, Caitlin.
Thank you. Test 1, 2. Hello, this is to who just joined by phone. Can I ask who's on the line? Sorry, I'll do that again. I was on mute. May I ask who's on the line?
Steve Box.
Thank you, Steve. Testing 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Et bienvenue à la Comité des finances et développement économique. On va commencer la réunion dans une minute. We'll start the meeting in 1 minute.
Hello, those who have joined by phone and have not already identified themselves, can you let me know who's on the line? Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues and ladies and gentlemen of the public who are watching in and listening. We're going to do roll call to start to make sure we have quorum for FEDCO.
Conseiller Cloutier,
Présent.
Councillor Darouz,
Here.
Councillor El Shantiri,
Here.
Councillor Gower,
Here.
Councillor Harder,
Here.
Councillor Hughley,
Here.
Conseiller Lula,
Présent.
Councillor Moffat, Councillor Moffat, Councillor Suds,
Here.
Councillor Tierney,
Present.
Councillor Dudas,
Present.
Mayor Watson.
Here. Okay, we have quorum, Madam Clerk.
Yes, you do.
Well, good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Merci d'accepter notre invitation ce matin. This is the first FEDCO meeting conducted by virtual means through Zoom, which is necessary in these times of physical distancing to keep everyone safe during this pandemic. Please note that those who do not need to participate in this meeting can also watch it on the live stream on the city's YouTube channel. I'd like to remind everyone participating in the meeting, please keep your microphones muted until I call upon you to speak so we avoid the echoing. I'll also, I will provide each committee member with the opportunity to ask questions or comments on each item. Committee members will be called on first, followed by other members of council who have joined the meeting. And at any point, if you wish to speak, you should use the raise hand Zoom function, which you will find in the Zoom controls at the bottom of your Zoom window near the audio controls. The committee coordinator, I'll be watching for these cues, and the usual 5-minute speaking limit will also apply. We have no public delegations signed up for the list of agenda items. However, members of the public are welcome to provide written comments, which will be circulated to all members of council. And if you have technical difficulties signing into the meeting, you can contact the clerk's office at committees@ottawa.ca. That's committees@ottawa.ca, or by calling 613-580-2424, extension 28136. Are there any declarations of interest? Est-ce qu'il y a des déclarations de l'intérêt?
None.
Confirmation of minutes, adoption de procès-verbaux pour le 9 mars. Carried. For the confidential minutes of the 9th of March.
Carried.
And for the special meeting of the 9th of March. Carried.
Carried.
I'll go through the consent agenda. Communications as presented. Item 1, Financial Services Department, Direction Générale des Services des Finances, Corporate Finances, Financing, Lease Arrangements 2019, Convention de Crédit Bail 2019. Any questions or comments on that report? Carried.
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 Revenue Service, Service des Recettes, General Accounts, Write-Offs 2019, and Repayment Agreements executed in 2019. Our congratulations to the city treasurer. In 2019, a total of 60,680 write-offs in a budget of close to $4 billion is very well done. Any questions or comments? Okay, on the report, adopté, carried.
Carried.
Office of the City Clerk, Bureau du Greffier Municipal, Politique et Activités Opérationnelles, Office of the City Clerk Annual Report. Receive.
Received.
And item 2 and 3, amending records retention and approve the goals identified in the French language service plan, adoption des buts pour le service pour le comité des francophones à la ville d'Ottawa. Adopté.
Carried.
Carried.
Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development, Service de planification et de l'infrastructure et de développement économique, Corporate Real Estate Office, extension of lease agreement 2020 Walkley Road, Social Services South Office. That's
Carried.
word, Councillor Cloutier. Carried.
Carried.
There are no in-camera items. I have another item that I would like to add on to the agenda, and we'd like to waive the rules to allow it to go on. So Councillor Dudas, I believe, has a motion to waive the rules of procedure. Councillor Dudas, please.
I do, Mr. Mayor. That the Finance and Economic Development Committee approve the addition of this item titled Progress Update on the Anti-Racism and Ethnocultural Relations Initiatives for consideration by the committee at its June 2nd, 2020 meeting pursuant to section 89.3 of the procedure bylaw, being bylaw 2019-8, and that FEDCO waive the rules of procedure to receive a presentation on the above noted item and pursuant to subsection 83.4a, dispense with the requirement for staff to provide a separate written report on this presentation.
Okay, on the motion. Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. I'd like to provide some comments on the tragic events that have transpired in the United States of America and for that matter around the world. The killing of George Floyd has left many Ottawa residents and Canadians shaken, angry, hurt, and disgusted. Watching his senseless killing is difficult to bear for many as it was for me. Comme plusieurs d'autres, j'ai eu beaucoup de difficultés à voir le meurtre de George Floyd. Watching Mr. Floyd say, "I can't breathe," and pleading for his mother's help as life drained from his body is more than most of us can tolerate. Following his senseless death, violence has erupted across the United States. The tens of thousands of protesters we are seeing in the streets across the US, here in Canada and around the world, are speaking up and standing in solidarity, and we must all stand in solidarity with them. And while the death of Mr. Floyd has focused most attention on the United States, we know that as a country, we are not immune to racism or racist behavior, and we are far from perfect. Racism is present in our midst. Le racisme est présent parmi nous. And we must continue to stamp it out whenever it rears its ugly head, whether it's in the community, at a police station, at City Hall, or anywhere else. I'm grateful that we live in a country where we have the courage to name things for what they are. And make no mistake, eradicating racism is a duty that belongs to each and every one of us in our city and around the world. It is our individual obligation as residents and citizens of our city, province, and country that we denounce racism each and every time we witness it. Whether the demonstration of racism appears insignificant or large, we must have the courage to stand up and say that we will not tolerate any form of racism in our city and in our country. And that includes standing up for our fellow residents of Asian descent who are being subjected to racist and hurtful taunts because of the absurd notion that they somehow bear responsibility for the COVID-19 pandemic. Because racism can only survive and spread if it has oxygen. The more we refuse to give it oxygen, the less it has room to breathe and expand. We also have to continue to do everything in our power to build a strong, prosperous, and inclusive community. That includes housing and food security, jobs, and economic security. We must do everything in our power so that all Ottawa residents, whether they have been here for 50 days or 50 years, feel that the city is their home and they feel welcomed and valued in this house. And even though the COVID-19 pandemic has made that challenge even more daunting, I believe that we are, as a city, province, and country, up to that task. Je crois que nous sommes prêts à relever le défi. With that being said, I plan to take part in the No Peace Until Justice March at the U.S. Embassy on Sussex Drive with members of the community on Friday, June 5th at 3 p.m. While I know it is an important event, I am encouraged by the positivity surrounding the particular gathering. We must remember that COVID-19 pandemic is still present in our community. If we do not respect the public health guidelines, we may set ourselves back weeks or even months. So for all those who are planning to attend, please wear a mask, keep your distance, and wash your hands as soon as you get the chance to do so. Today, I'm asking members of FEDCO and then members of council on June 10th to continue to work together to demonstrate our collective willingness to strengthen the fight against racism in our city. I'm pleased to announce that Councillor Ralston King has accepted my proposal to take on the role of council liaison for anti-racism issues and ethno-cultural relations. Members of council and the public will recall that Councillor King proposed that an anti-racism secretariat be created at the City of Ottawa in 2019. I was proud to work with him and all of you to include this measure in the 2020 budget. I have a motion today for consideration by FEDCO, and I would ask for the consent of all members to waive the rules, as you have, thank you, so that we can consider the motion today. The motion allows us to build on that plan that we approved last year. Councillor King has been approached by numerous groups and individuals who wish to engage with him on the city's various anti-racism plans. The motion would recognize Councillor King in a formal leadership role on behalf of Ottawa City Council, similar to that played by Councillor Kavanagh on gender equity issues, Councillor Luloff on veterans issues, and Councillor McKenney on housing and homelessness. I ask all members of FEDCO to support the motion before us today, and I thank sincerely Councillor King for his acceptance. And I'd ask Councillor King to provide a progress update on the creation of an anti-racism secretary, and then I'll be pleased to read the motion so we can offer comments and questions. Merci encore. Conseiller King, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for putting my name forward to play a more formal role as Council Liaison for Anti-Racism and Ethno-Cultural Relations. Given the worldwide impact of COVID-19, this pandemic has been dominating headlines for months. But when a global pandemic gets pushed from the spotlight, you know issues replacing it are historic and consequential. The unrest that we're seeing now in the United States demonstrates the real and continuing impact of anti-Black racism. But we must recognize that racism, injustice, and entrenched systemic inequality have as much impact in Canada as south of the border. This country has its share of hate, and Ottawa is no stranger to racism, race-based discrimination, and economic and social disparity. Our city has experienced an increase in hate crimes against Indigenous people, racialized people, as well as the Jewish and Muslim communities. We have seen discrimination through prejudice, ignorance, thoughtlessness, and racist stereotyping, which ultimately has led to disparities regarding income, employment, housing, healthcare, and education. We must also acknowledge that these factors, when combined with systemic racism, leads to the overrepresentation of racialized people within the criminal justice system and recurrent negative interactions with the police. But that's not a situation we accept. And over the last year, we have moved to ensure the city is actively taking measures to eliminate systemic racism. That's why I'm proud that the mayor, along with the rest of my colleagues at council, wholeheartedly embraced my proposal to establish an anti-racism secretariat for the City of Ottawa. When we established that policy unit in this year's budget, the aim was to address systemic racism in our community and within the corporation. The Secretariat will make sure we apply an anti-racism lens to the policies our city develops. We need to ensure the decisions we make and the services we provide are delivered equitably, that they cause no barriers for residents because of their color, culture, or ethnic origin. In partnership with the people we serve, we need to continue to move towards equity. We need to ensure everyone has the same opportunities when accessing the services and programs we offer. If we don't provide that level of service to all people for any reason, let alone because of the color of their skin or their culture, we are failing in our duty. Our government has a responsibility to identify when members of our community are denied equal opportunity to succeed and to eliminate the systemic barriers creating this inequity. It's the goal of the Anti-Racism Secretariat to do just that, whether it's related to employment, governance, health, housing, or economic development. Obviously, the city has been fully engaged over the last dozen weeks with the public health emergency. As a result, we've had to adjust our approach on the Anti-Racism Secretariat to ensure that we were answering the immediate and urgent needs of the community in this time of crisis. But we have made progress. The city's 2020 budget allocated an operating budget of $100,000 to establish the office of the Anti-Racism Secretariat. The next step will be to staff it. That will require a full-time anti-racism specialist who will work with the women and gender equity specialists and the rest of the corporation to conduct an environmental scan and then prepare a set of strategic actions. Incidentally, I'm happy to be working on these issues along with Councillor Teresa Kavanaugh, who was appointed Council's first Women and Gender Equity Liaison. City staff is now in the process of hiring that specialist for anti-racism, who will also carry out public engagement to build the Secretariat. They will establish an advisory committee as well, with significant representation from the community. Unfortunately, the competition for that position had to be put on hold when the state of emergency was declared. But city staff has been able to resume the search and expect to fill the role within the next few weeks. Once in place, the specialist's immediate priorities will be related to the pandemic. They will work with key stakeholders on research and communications about the impact of COVID-19 on racialized persons and communities in Ottawa. Right now, that's where the city's biggest decisions are focused, and I'm pleased that our public health agency will start to collect and analyze disaggregated race-based data in response to advocacy by community groups and health experts. It makes sense that the Secretariat will make that its main concern to ensure that the policies we're putting in place today adequately consider the needs of all communities. I don't want to suggest that the city's Human Needs Task Force hasn't been doing an excellent job of that. After all, the task force was set up specifically to identify the urgent needs and priorities of isolated and vulnerable populations in communities across Ottawa, regardless of race. They have been doing a remarkable job. I know we have representatives from the Human Needs Task Force with us here today, and they can speak to some of the ways they are making their work as inclusive as possible. I very much look forward to staff hiring the specialists for the Secretariat office and for the work we will do together in the months and years ahead. I also look forward to the Secretariat providing support to community groups who have long labored towards equity and social justice, whether they are organizations that support First Nations, Inuit, Métis, new immigrants, racialized, or religious communities. All of these groups call Ottawa home, and they have a right to fulsome participation in our city. I also look forward to the Secretariat participating in the United for All initiative, a local coalition led by the United Way and many community organizations who are coordinating grassroots efforts to overcome hate and violence in Ottawa. We want our residents to know that this council is collectively committed to actual systemic change and to the elimination of racism in our city, which is long overdue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and thank you for your dedication and compassion and leadership on this issue. So I will read the motion that I'm proposing. Whereas the City of Ottawa is committed to building a more inclusive city by implementing anti-racism initiatives to prevent systemic racism in policies, programs, and services, and building relationships with racialized communities. And whereas prior to and since his election as Councillor for Ward 13, Rideau Rockcliffe in April 2019, Councillor King has been a tireless advocate for the need to address systemic racism in our community and for ensuring that racial equality is considered in city policies, programs, and services. Whereas following the proposal of Councillor Ralston King, Council approved funding for the creation of an anti-racism secretariat for the City of Ottawa as part of the 2020 budget process. And whereas further to the recommendation of the 2018-2022 governance review, Council may appoint a member of Council as Council liaison to work in partnership with staff to address specific issues. Therefore, be it resolved that FEDCO recommends City Council appoint Councillor Ralston King as the Council liaison for Anti-Racism and Ethnocultural Relations Initiative for the 2018-2022 term of Council so that he may continue his leadership on this issue and work with city staff to advance anti-racism and race relations initiatives. So that's the motion that I've proposed, and I'd welcome any questions or comments at this time. And I'm going to ask the clerk to identify people who have signaled they'd like to speak. We'll start with members of FEDCO first.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yeah, we're going to start. We'll just check with councillors on FEDCO first. Councillor Kavanaugh. Anyone on FEDCO wish to offer a comment? Councillor DeRose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to take a moment to thank you for putting this motion, and I want to congratulate Councillor Ralston King on his position. I know that we'll be here to support him and work with him, and also with Councillor Kavanaugh. So thank you very much for this initiative. I'm very proud to say that I live in Canada and especially in Ottawa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Merci. Other members of FEDCO?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please. I think your mute button's on, Councillor.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much to my colleague, Councillor King, for this initiative. He was the one who worked very hard to bring this forward many months ago, right after he got elected, and he was right that this was very much needed, and I look forward to working with him because obviously there is a lot of crossover between gender equity and in general equity overall, and I look forward to continuing to work with him. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Kavanaugh. Other members of council who'd like to speak or ask questions?
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Oui, Conseiller Cloutier, bonjour.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire, and Ralston, congratulations on your appointment, and thank you for the work you've done and your advocacy. You mentioned a little bit in your comments, Councillor King, with respect to the Human Needs Task Force. Did you find that it was working in silos? How do we need to focus our attention with respect to working with vulnerable communities in a time of crisis or others? Did you find that we are being more effective in breaking down the silos that sometimes constrain the resources and the initiatives of the city? And any thoughts as to how we could do that better as we come out of this pandemic and in the future?
Well, thank you, Councillor Cloutier, for that question. I fully agree with you. I believe that we need greater coordination at the city. I think that we're starting to see that, especially during this time of public health emergency with COVID-19, the establishment of a Human Needs Task Force. So that has been important, and the development of integrated services teams in dealing with social services at the city. But I think that that's a first step. I believe that we need greater coordination, especially around areas of food security, and I'll be raising that in a different venue soon. But it's my belief that we need to have greater coordination of the great efforts that we're undertaking and that the community is undertaking. Everybody is working hard, but I think that we have to ensure that we're laboring towards that one goal. And I think that that goal involves greater investments in our communities. That's one of the reasons why I got involved in politics, to ensure that we have that call and that we are enhancing the quality of life by enhancing people's human potential. I think of my neighborhood where we have youth who have massive challenges and unfortunately get involved with the criminal justice system. And it's not just a waste of economic resources, if we are just being frank and looking at it economically, with $1.2 million having to be expended on everybody who is prosecuted and is incarcerated in our community. I would rather a few $100,000 go into community programs that would provide those youth with wonderful educational and recreational opportunities to avoid that criminal justice system, and to really contribute positively to our cities, to our communities. So I'm going to seek greater coordination of resources, as well as more resources from the senior levels of government, so that we can invest in our communities so that they do not become increasingly marginalized.
Right. Anything else, Councillor Cloutier? Est-ce qu'il y a des autres choses? Bon. Des autres commentaires? So on, the motion is presented, carried?
Carried.
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 Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor King. There are no in-camera items. Information previously distributed in advance, Kilmorey House Special Levy Community Vote results. Are there any notices of motion by members of committee? Madam Clerk, any inquiries?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Adjournment. Meeting adjourned.
Carried.
Carried.
Our next meeting is the 7th of July. La prochaine réunion, c'est le 7 juillet 2020. Merci. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.